policy of splendid isolation. The policy of splendid isolation refers to Britain's foreign policy approach during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly between 1815 and 1914. It was characterized by the British government's decision to avoid permanent alliances or entanglements with other major powers on the European continent. The term splendid isolation was coined by the German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck in the late 19th century. He used this term to describe Britain's foreign policy approach, which was characterized by avoiding permanent alliances and not actively involving itself in the intricacies of European politics. The policy of splendid isolation was adopted by the British government during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly under the leadership of prime ministers like Lord Salisbury, Robert Gascoigne Cecil, and Arthur Balfour. It was an intentional strategy by the British government to maintain a degree of independence and flexibility in their foreign policy decisions while safeguarding their global interests and maintaining naval supremacy. However, as global events and power dynamics evolved, Britain gradually moved away from strict isolation and started forming alliances with other nations, eventually leading to the end of the policy during World War I. Key features of the policy of splendid isolation. 1. Non-involvement in continental affairs. Britain chose not to form any permanent military alliances or political commitments with other European powers. Instead, it focused on maintaining its naval supremacy and safeguarding its imperial interests. 2. Naval power and imperial expansion. The policy emphasized the importance of a strong navy to protect British interests worldwide. Britain expanded its colonial territories during this period, including in Africa and Asia. 3. Avoidance of European entanglements. By avoiding alliances and entanglements with European powers, Britain aimed to retain flexibility in its foreign policy decisions and avoid being drawn into continental conflicts. 4. Balance of power. While Britain avoided formal alliances, it still sought to maintain a balance of power in Europe to prevent any single country from dominating the continent and threatening British interests. Reasons for the policy of splendid isolation. 1. Geopolitical advantage. Britain's geographical location as an island nation provided a natural defense and made it less susceptible to direct threats from continental powers. 2. Colonial interests. The British Empire was expanding rapidly during this period, and the focus was on consolidating and protecting its colonial holdings around the world. 3. Wariness of continental entanglements. Britain had experienced the Napoleonic Wars and was cautious about becoming entangled in European conflicts that could divert resources from its global imperial interests. 4. Changing European alliances. European alliances were fluid and often shifting. Britain preferred to remain neutral and avoid being dragged into conflicts based on the changing dynamics of continental politics. Impacts of the policy of splendid isolation. 1. Preservation of British sovereignty. By avoiding permanent alliances, Britain maintained a degree of independence and freedom in making its foreign policy decisions, safeguarding its sovereignty. 2. Naval supremacy. The focus on maintaining a strong navy allowed Britain to dominate the seas and protect its maritime trade routes, ensuring the security of its vast empire. 3. Colonial expansion. The policy of splendid isolation coincided with Britain's expansion of colonial territories in Africa and Asia, consolidating its imperial holdings. 4. Limited influence in European affairs. By abstaining from active involvement in European politics, Britain's influence in shaping continental events was somewhat limited. Number 5. Diplomatic challenges. The policy of isolation led to occasional diplomatic challenges, as Britain had to navigate complex relationships with European powers without formal alliances. 6. Economic opportunities. The avoidance of major wars and entanglements allowed Britain to focus on economic growth and trade, becoming a leading global economic power. 7. European balance of power. Britain's abstention from forming alliances contributed to a delicate balance of power on the European continent, preventing any single nation from dominating. 8. Increased attention to overseas territories. With a focus on its colonies and global interests, Britain developed administrative structures and policies to manage its far-flung territories. 9. Shift in alliances. Over time, the policy of splendid isolation gradually evolved, leading to a closer alignment with France and Russia, culminating in the formation of the Triple Entente before World War I. 10. Impact on World War I. The shift away from isolation and the formation of alliances had a profound impact on the events leading up to World War I. Britain's entry in policy of splendid isolation. The policy of splendid isolation refers to Britain's foreign policy approach during the late 19th and early headings for the policy of splendid isolation. 1. Introduction to splendid isolation. 2. Origin of the term. 3. Adoption of the policy. 4. Key features of splendid isolation. Non-involvement in continental affairs. Naval power and imperial expansion. Avoidance of European entanglements. Balance of power. 5. Reasons for splendid isolation. Geopolitical advantage. Colonial interests. Wariness of continental entanglements. Changing European alliances. 6. Impacts of splendid isolation. Preservation of British sovereignty, naval supremacy, colonial expansion, limited influence in European affairs, diplomatic challenges, economic opportunities, European balance of power, increased attention to overseas territories, shift in alliances, impact on World War I. 7. Conclusion. 10. Impact on World War I. The shift away from isolation and the formation of alliances had a profound impact on the events leading up to World War I. Britain's entry into the war on the side of the Triple Entente shaped the conflict's outcome and future global politics. Overall, while the policy of splendid isolation served Britain's interests in some ways, it also posed challenges and necessitated adjustments as the geopolitical landscape shifted. The policy's eventual modification was a reflection of the changing dynamics of international relations and Britain's evolving role on the global stage.